What is up, my fellow eats? Welcome back to MythGamers. Mega Man 4 is the fourth toughest nails platforming entry in the classic NES Mega Man series. Platforming usually means we're going to be jumping a lot. Or not. That's right, today we're going to set out to find out if you can beat Mega Man 4 without jumping. For convenience sake, I'll be playing on the Mega Man Legacy Collection for PlayStation 4. This includes the luxury of save states and rewind, which I'm definitely going to be using for this run. Yeah, I'm not a god and goddess. A title like that is specifically reserved to the almighty Game Champ 3000. If she wants to do a run of this that is single segment without save states or rewind, she can be my guest, but I'm only here to find out what's possible. For the rules of the challenge, a jump is specifically referred to as a vertical boost in height activated by the jump button, which means sliding is completely allowed. This might seem kind of stupid to allow, but it makes the challenge much more possible, and you have to agree with me that even if the slide and jump are activated by the same button, it's a completely different move than jumping. Other than that, I'd like to mention that most of this music used in the video is composed by the legendary Legend of Renegade on YouTube. They do a ton of great Sega Genesis style remixes of video game music, and their stuff from the classic Mega Man series is, dare I say, better than the Wily Fortress soundtrack. Go check them out. Link is in the description. Now back to the introduction. Before we can get into the challenge, though, we do have to also find out how we're going to get through the game without jumping. Rush Coil is an item that we start the game with. The item gives us an instant boost in vertical height after making contact with the middle of Rush Coil's sprite. That's right. Unlike every other classic Mega Man series, and that includes Rush Coil, you don't have to be touching the top of Rush Coil in order to activate the effects of Rush Coil. Given this information, this will be our main form of jump replacement throughout the playthrough. But we'll also find a few more as we move in. With all that out of the way, we can head right into the run. But that doesn't mean we're at all ready to go into a stage. No. Please instead take one good look at this stage selection screen. That's right, choosing the right stage order is absolutely essential to our run. Initially, you want to get all the jump replacements available as quick as possible, but we need to get these from other stages. We can get the first these from Drill Man stage, Pharaoh Man stage, Dive Man stage, and Toe Man stage. Since Toe Man stage gives you the pretty useless Rush Marine item, we won't be worrying about him for a bit. That leaves Pharaoh Man stage, Dill Man stage, and Dive Man stage. Pharaoh Man stage and Dive Man stage include very helpful jump replacements, but need other jump replacements to get to those jump replacements. With no other choices left to us, Drill Man stage may look like a great idea, but there's one problem. Drill Man stage is one of the hardest stages in the entire game. So we're going to need a little bit more than just our bodies just to get through there. There's simply not enough checkpoints to make it through and have it be a viable first choice. There is still one more option though. Instead, let's take a look at Dustman stage. His stage allows us to farm E-tanks with an eddy that appears around the middle of the map. With E-tanks in our hand, we might be able to beat Drill Man. Select Dustman and take a few deep breaths as you realize that you probably shouldn't have done this run. Really, I'm not joking. Dustman stage is the perfect introduction to this challenge. We start with a few mets that we can actually kill before they even shoot. There are also these holes that spit out enemies. Shoot two at the same time, then rush coil over. The riot shield boys are very easy to avoid, and with some slides. After that, we drop down to farm this Spiky Joe to get back our full health and weapon energy for Rush Coil. After that, we come to these very threatening rising platforms. But before doing so, we take these annoying ladybugs. When tackling the platforms, spawn Rush Coil on the spikes in between them. Also, if his sprite just falls through the dust spikes and Rush Coil doesn't spawn in, don't worry. Just try again. Rush is just being a sissy baby that doesn't like pointy things. After getting through those platforms and picking up the E-Tank from Eddie, we reach the Crusher section, which is exactly like God intended. After that, there's a few more easy rooms before reaching Dustman himself, which is very easy. He usually jumps over you, allowing you to easily run under, or slide under him. And his vacuum and dust attacks are very easy to avoid. Level down his health and you're golden. And after that, we have unlocked Dust Crusher. Dust Crusher is the weaknesses of a good amount of bosses, and it's a bit taller than normal. A normal shot, like a charge shot on command, but with less power. But the cons, it shoots straight forward, and there's no way to change its trajectory, so you kind of have to aim it in a way, so it kind of sucks in a way. After farming a bunch of E-Tanks from a Dustman stage, seriously, get used to doing a stage over and over again, because we're doing it after every stage, which, for the sake of things, I will not be reminding you every time. Anyway, next we head into Drillman stage. It starts off easy with a few enemies and a Spiky Joe, but after that we reach these bats that are annoying as hell. After dealing with those, though, we drop down to learn a very important trick. The ceiling is covered with death spikes, with the floor having holes full of death spikes, and we're intended to jump over. Rush Coiling over blasts us into the death spikes on the ceiling, killing us, so we're gonna have to find another way around this. For a good amount of time, this felt like the end of the run, but then I just accidentally slid on Rush Coil, and his effects didn't activate, and he acted more like a platform. I think why this happens is that Mega Man is locked in a set Y value when sliding that can't be changed by input other than falling until the sliding animation finishes. Usually Rush Coil is a platform, but with a jump boost mechanism attached. But when we're sliding, the jump boost doesn't trigger, and Rush just acts as a platform. Anyway, we meet another roadblock very quickly with these stairs. So I mean, if those death spikes weren't the end for a good week or two, I thought this was the end for sure. But there's a very weird way to get past it. Rush and all his forms have a weird pinging mechanism where his sprite and Mega Man sprite are always connected. They don't move together, but they are meant to stay close. When something interrupts this, Rush zips to wherever Mega Man's X value on the stages. Given this information, we can spawn Rush Coil to the left, get hit, and then Rush Coil will snap back to us, giving the jump boost immediately. After that, we deal with these turrets, and then this next part with the falling rocks. Some advice I can give is shooting 1 or 2 rocks before sliding under. Soon we make it to Drillman himself, who is much harder than Dustman, since he actually walks on the floor. It's mostly just spamming charge shots whenever you can, and hoping the RNG is on your side, though. If you need to use an E-Tank and you have some left, feel free to do so, but we can beat him eventually. After defeating Drillman, we're rewarded with the Rush Jet, and it's kind of useful, but also has a good amount of problems. Rush Jet spawns in to be level with our Buster, meaning that we usually have to jump to mount him. That doesn't mean he's useless, though. It just means we'll have to find other ways to mount him. And no, you can't just rush coil onto rush jet. Trust me, rush jet doesn't spawn in quick enough. After defeating Drill Man, we also get the drill bombs, which is kind of like a fully charged shot on demand because it does a lot of damage, but it's not very useful since it's a straight dead shot just like dust shot, and trajectory can't be changed. After taking down Drill Man, we head into Pharaoh Man stage. Right off the bat, there's a super long quicksand pit. These super long quicksand pits, and that we'll have to find a way around. As unless we continuously jump, which we can't do, we'll just keep sinking into this quicksand, eventually dying. I got past the first one with a maneuver using a combination of a slide and a damage boost while sinking into the sand pit, but into the sand pit to manipulate my Y value to trick the game into thinking I'm mounted rush jet. But for the second one, we can't do that because there's no enemy to damage boost with. One eventually spawns in, but by the time we slide there, we've sunken too far into the quicksand to even try to do the same thing we did with the first sand pit. We just slide under the enemy. So sadly, this is where we have to have our first jump. I know, it's sad. But even beating a Mega Man game with 1 or 2 jumps would be super impressive, so I think we should keep going. So now this is a minimum jump run, with 1 jump on the counter. You could just say to go down the hole skipping the Super Balloon entirely and not picking it up, but we'll definitely need it throughout the run. So I'd rather have 1 jump to get the Super Balloon instead of many jumps, because we didn't pick it up before. With that, that makes this jump number 1. If anyone can find a way past this, please tell me in the comments below. But let's get on with the rest of this stage. Luckily, the rest of this stage is very easy, but is kind of a puzzle. There are little brain teasers, and like in here, how instead of spawning Rush Coil on the platform you're standing on, you actually want to spawn him on the death spikes you're trying to avoid and slide onto his coil. These platforms that you have to stand on to activate are interesting, but as long as you spawn in Rush Coil in the right place, you'll be able to make it out alive. Eventually, we will face off with Pharaoh Man, and he's kind of hard. The very first thing you want to do, and once the battle starts, is rush coil your way up to the middle platform. Then you want to stay on that middle platform using his secondary weakness of his Dust Crusher to shoot him whenever you can. If you need to use an E-Tank, you got it from doing Dustman stage again, and then feel free to do so, but soon enough you'll kill him. The Super Balloon is similar to the Rush Jet, as the platforms spawn at Buster height, but unlike Rush Jet, these are a lot more useful given that they don't have a long spawn animation, meaning we can spawn them in while in the air due to Rush Coil. But after this stage, we also get the incredibly useful Pharaoh Shot. Pharaoh Shot can sit and shoot in 6 directions, meaning it can shoot diagonally, meaning that we no longer have to jump in order to shoot things that are in the air, because you could shoot something diagonally now. It's awesome. And then it can also be charged and shot in 6 directions. Yeah, this, no joke, can be charged and just like shot into enemies. But then the con, not a lot of weapon energy. It definitely wastes a lot of weapon energy when you charge it up. So it's hard, but it's also really nice. Since that's over with, we're moving on to Dive Man stage. The stage isn't too bad. If I were you, I would try using as little weapon energy as possible. As many times you have barely enough weapon energy before a time that's good to farm for. These whale mini bosses look very threatening, but You can either use the newly acquired Pharaoh shot that can shoot diagonally, or just rush coil shooting while you're in the air, and they'll go down. And they'll go down eventually. Here you need to spawn a super platform, balloon platform while you're climbing up the ladder, so you can get the extra bit of distance you need. This ladder doesn't seem like much of a problem, but Rush Coil doesn't like ladders and phases right through them. Later in the level, we go down to gather the wire weapon. After that, we have to these rising and descending water with death spikes at the top of it. For the first one, we use wire weapon on death spikes, pressing down and right to drop down before hitting death spikes. Dive Man himself is kind of hard, but as long as you use the strategy of spawning Rush Coil, spamming bullets into his head, and hopping over with Rush Coil when he comes towards you, he's not as hard as Drill Man, but he's definitely something. Soon enough, he'll be crying in the corner as well. The wire weapon is basically just another Rush Coil that works a bit better in some places, where small places would be generally be a problem for spawning in Rush Coil. All you need to have for wire weapon is a small enough place to fit Mega Man and a ceiling above. Jumping may be the intended way to drop down, but from the ceiling, but there's a second way that involves holding down in whatever horizontal direction you're going. It somehow works. Overall, the wire weapon will be our second most useful. After beating Dive Man, we also get the dive missiles, which are pretty awesome because you don't have to aim them, since it hones in on enemies, which means you can just shoot them and they'll go right to any enemies on the screen, which is pretty awesome. But the cons, it uses a lot of weapon energy. It definitely drains weapon energy when you use it a lot. Now that we've gotten all the jump places that we absolutely need, where are we heading next? Here you can kind of do whatever you want, whatever order you want, but I did what seemed the most logical, trying to look at weaknesses and what each stage would be easier with. It would be nice to tackle Ring and Brightman stage first, but it might be nice to have some more weapons for our arsenal first. So let's head to Skullman stage next. Skullman stage is a good introduction to the wire weapon. There are small holes that you'll need to use the wire weapon to get out of. These Skelebone Joes will hurl bones at you, and they're a bit of a pain, but in the butt, but to kill. But as long as you can land a charge shot on them, you'll be fine. I wish I had more to say about Skullman stage, but it's not that hard. Skullman himself is a mid-level boss. He shoots you, meaning you have to be damaged a lot in order to win. But as long as you use his weakness of Dust Crusher, he'll be going down in not too long. After that, we get Skull Barrier, which is pretty good. It can stop a bullet from hitting you, which is pretty nice. I mean, pretty nice to be immune to bullets, yes. But it also protects Mega Man in all directions. But also it kills most enemies in one hit, so that's really nice. But the thing is, there's no range past yourself, and you can't like shoot it in a direction like Leaf Shield from Mega Man 2. No, once it hits something, it just doesn't. The shield doesn't exist anymore, and that's all that happens. So, yeah, that's Skull Barrier for you. Next, we're heading into Ringman stage. The beginning pressures you with these turrets that lock onto you and shoot you, but thanks to dive missiles and the Skull Barrier, we can get out in one piece. The final vertical section is actually a bit of a puzzler, as you have to take the left edge path, an unconventional one, but a possible one for sure. The Hippo mini-boss isn't that hard if you use Pharaoh Shot, but after that, and a small section of testing your speed, we meet a super hard mini-boss. Spam a Pharaoh Shot into his eyes and hope they hit before he kills you. If you made it through that, there's... the next section is a puzzling stretch of with disappearing platforms with over a death pit, so be careful when making your your rush hops. The last disappearing platform is found on this ladder. After you drop down, slide to the left as fast as you can so you don't die as death spikes beneath you. And there's another one of those ring mini bosses after that, but you can just damage boost past it with rush coil this time. Mega Man is kind of hard, but he's not very hard. Mostly only because we have his weakness though. Pharaoh Shot is very helpful here. If you need to use an A-Tank like I did here, feel free to do so, but once he's down, we move on to Toad Man stage. After that, we unlock Ring Boomerang, which kind of sucks. It's a tiny bit taller than a normal shot, so it's kind of like Dust Shot, and it's kind of useful in that way, but then again, there's no way to change its trajectory, so it's also kind of useless, so that's incredible. Toad Man stage is pretty easy. The Ridney Rain effect in the beginning of the level can kind of make things hard, but as long as you hold right, you'll be okay. These sewer sections are pretty fun to traverse. These snail mini bosses look threatening, but are made of very easy thanks to Dive Missile's homing feature. And Toad Man himself is just as easy as the normal playthrough, made even easier with the drill bombs. Killing him is a piece of certified cricket cake. I don't know. Do toads eat crickets? After defeating Toad Man, we unlock Rush Marine, which it's pretty cool, kind of. You don't need to jump to mount it, which is awesome, unlike Rush Jet. And then it's great for underwater sections, but we're never underwater, so while it's great to have it, but you also get one of the best weapons in the game after defeating Toad Man, Rain Flush. Rain Flush kills any enemy on screen, and you never have to jump or aim to hit any enemy. But it does use a lot of weapon energy, so give or take, it's pretty good. Now that we have his weakness, we're heading into Bright Man stage. These holes are kind of a pain thanks to the low ceiling. We can get through the first one with wire weapon, but for the second one, that adds a corner wall, and we will need a different idea. I started by using Rush Coil, but then immediately after triggering the boost, we switch right to S and the Super Balloon so we can spawn in a platform in the perfect position and land on it afterwards. After that, we slide off the platform, and that platform will give you the perfect amount of distance to reach the platform on the right. After we face these grasshopper platforms, which are even stupider than what we just faced. We need Rush Coil to get onto them, but we also need to use Rush Coil and Wire Weapon to get around these frickin' grasshopper platforms that are always jumping in the worst spots. And these totem poles make it even worse. So maneuvering around their bullets is hard, but possible. Soon we meet these chandelier enemies, and they're kind of annoying, but good for farming. And then we have another grasshopper section, which is just a bigger pain. After that, we have this one room, which is so stupid, and because the solution makes no sense. You have to basically, you have to slide in this wall after spawning in Rush Coil at the right of the room. Then let the chandelier enemy hit you, and Rush Coil will snap back to you because of that damage boost trick that we talked about, and you'll be boosted up the ladder. After that, we're far from over, as now we have these platforms that move downward in a semicircle. Some stay up, and some just fall down and disappear, making this even harder. After rush coiling to the first one and using Wire up into the next one, we use the fact that these move downward and spawn in rush threat when we're down, sliding onto him when we're up. After that, let Rushjet take you to the boss. Brightman himself is hard, but he's a bit easier thanks to the Rain Flush. I didn't know this until later, but so I didn't use this it here. But apparently, if you start the match out with a fully charged shot, he'll never do the attack where he freezes you in place, which would have made things a lot easier. Anyway, he'll eventually be down as well, which, for how hard Brightman was, I'm surprised we were able to get past it. And it makes it worrying for what comes ahead. From there, we gain the Flash Stopper, which is... it stops time so you could... and you can still shoot, but since we can't change weapons and still have the time stop going, we're kind of not going to ever use this because we can't really get into a good situation with it. So yeah, it sucks, but it's fine. Now that the 8 Robot Masters are down and our arsenal's completely full, we are just getting started. That's right, we still have half the game to go, as 8 stages await us in the Doctor's fortresses. Also, this is our last chance to farm E-Tanks for a good while, unlike the Robot Master stages. We can't just farm E-Tanks from Dustman's stage and use as many as we like. Now, we must conserve our E-Tanks and use as little as we need, as we're going to need to survive at least a couple of stages without farming E-Tanks. This is gonna be a toughie. After farming for as many E-Tanks as we can hold, being 9, we head into the Russian scientist's Dr. Cossack's Fortress. We honestly don't even need to continuously farm until we have 9, as we can even get a 9th E-Tank right at the beginning of the first Dr. Cossack stage. The E-Tank is located at the left edge of the snow. These slinky enemies are very annoying, but can be beaten. The platforms they are standing on have ice physics, so the sliperiness can make it hard to make your rush coil jumps, or rush coil hops, I guess. It's not very hard to be honest, though. And then after farming and climbing a few more ladders, we meet our oldest foes, the Skelebone Jones. These suckers are back for revenge since Skullman's stage, and they are a lot better with picking their perches. With the first one, we have to use Rush Coil to hop up on to the platform it is standing on. Here, we are forced to take a hit of damage, allowing us to use our invincibility frames to use Rush Coil one more time to hop over to the next platform. The rest you can hit with a charge shot and careful timing. You do also eventually reach the second to last of these, where you'll have to just hope that he drops a big weapon energy refill after killing him. If he doesn't, you simply won't have enough weapon energy on Rush Coil to get through the rest of this stage. Yes, this relies on RNG once in the challenge. It's that. Soon after that, we reach these ladders that look like a huge problem. We can actually get through them pretty easily. Spawn in Rush Jet while still climbing the first ladder, then walk to the left and to land on him. After triggering Rush Jet, hold up and right on the D-pad so it'll travel more up than left, allowing you to barely grasp the final ladder. After farming this Spiky Joe, we reach the boss. The boss is some sort of weird robot moth thing. Whatever it is, it's beside the actual point. Thanks to our diagonal charged fire with Pharaoh Shot, it's going to be very easy to get this guy down. Making sure to be careful not to trap yourself in a hole created by the moth. With all these strategies, the moth is surely to go down eventually. Stage 2 is just as hard, if not harder. We start with some rooms, with some unsettling platforming, but then we have the long path of death spikes that we're supposed to fly over with Rush Jet. If you remember correctly, Mounting Rush Jet is like, without jumping, is like an exam day in geometry class, only you forgot your graphing calculator. Now, we could probably find some kind of damage boost trick to mount Rush Jet, but this is where I threw in the towel for the second time. I know, a second jump is disappointing, but look at how far we've come with only a singular jump. You might be asking about trying to cross the Death Spike pit without Rush Jet, and that, well, actually is somewhat a good idea, but there's a small problem. Using a combination of Rush Coil and Super Balloon platforms, you can get to a pretty far distance, even reaching this weapon energy pickup, but this is where we face our problem. This whole trick relies on damage boosting, so we don't die when we land on the death spikes below us. Now, that's no problem, but for a long time, thanks to these spike enemies that fly in a zigzag pattern leftward and only leftward. The only problem is, eventually these enemies stop spawning in, meaning we can't damage boost forever and would just die eventually. So with all that said, jump number 2 has been added to the counter. After that jump button failure, we aren't even close to being finished. This next room has platforms with disappearing and reappearing spikes that Rush Quill can't be spawned on. This means we'll have to fly around the platforms and with Rush Jet. After spawning him in at the perfect Y value position thanks to this ladder, we fall and land on him, and then hold up and right on the D-pad. Don't worry too much when you intersect with the final platform. For some reason, we actually snap back up to the ladder where we get damaged. It's kind of weird, but if you thought those two rooms were puzzling, then get ready as we climb up this next ladder and gaze upon the most puzzling room in MythGamers entirely. 4 spike blocks with not as much platform area where you're entirely safe. It's entirely possible without jumping, but far from easy. Use Rush Jet from the first ladder, fall on him, and to mount him, and then hold up and left. But not too much as to ensure that you reach the next green spikeless platform. After that, use Rush Royal to get to the third spike block. After that, quickly go to the weapons menu and then close out to despawn Rush Coil. Next, you need to quickly spawn him in again. After that, get hit by the spikes from the spike block you're standing on. If you're in the right position and Rush Coil is in the right position, Rush will snap to the left of you, and you will be floating in the air. Land on Rush Coil's coil, and then you want to immediately switch to Super Balloon. As long as you swim on Super Balloon in the perfect spot, you will have just enough distance to reach the ladder to the left. After that, we thankfully get a little break, and the rest of the stage isn't too hard, but and then we reach the boss, and the boss is hard. Remember that S-Balloon and Rush Coil combo we learned in Bright Man stage? Yeah, you're gonna have to be using that a lot this boss. This boss has this big orb that sits in this hexagon with these rising and descending platforms. You can get atop of these platforms when you're able to shoot the orb thanks to these our Rush Coil and Super Balloon platform situation. And then use Dust Shot when you're on those platforms, as that is its weakness. With these strategies, you'll kill it eventually. Keyword eventually. Then there's Dr. Cossack's Stage 3. It's an auto-scroller over an endless pit. Before facing this stage, die over and over again until you get a game over. When you press continue, the game puts you back at Dr. Cossack's Fortress Stage 3, meaning we can effectively get a game over to effectively gain back all our full weapon energy on all items. Now that we have our arsenal fully filled up, you might still be asking, how are we going to cheat and beat an auto-scroller without jumping? The answer to that is simple. Cheese. Rich and stinky cheese. Immediately, when entering the level, head past the a few of the first platforms until you reach the platform, which you'll see there's a ceiling above. Use wire weapon on said ceiling, then let the scrolling screen push you until wire weapon's arm is not on the ceiling anymore. Now you're skyrocketing to the sky, and once the screen stops scrolling, you'll need a way down. The usual way is just to get down. To get down is usually just spam jump, but we obviously can't do that. Instead, when this screen stops scrolling, press start to go into the weapons menu. Don't change your weapon, then exit out of the weapons menu and hold down and right on the D-pad. If you did it right, after about 15 seconds, you'll start to see Mega Man falling towards the floor. You can even aim this fall to not get hit by the spiky Joe below if you know what you're doing. After climbing up this ladder, we fight, and we have the lightly scary room coming up next. There are 2 platforms with these slicer blades that are in between a ladder. We are standing on, which rush coil will always phase through it, and the platform we are trying to get into. So, first kill the 2 slicer blades with rain flush, then use it twice and they should both die. Next, you'll want to switch to the super balloon and climb down the ladder until Mega Man is barely fully on the ladder. Then spawn in a super balloon platform, climb up the ladder and fall onto the platform. If you shot it right into the right place, you'll have barely enough time and air to walk onto the first platform. After that, it's a straight shot up to the ladder. This screen might seem easy, but you're always under a tight window thanks to zigzag traveling spiked enemies seen to the left. So you can only shoot him when he's on the ladder. So he's kind of annoying. After that, we have one more auto-scrolling section, which is even harder than the last. Initially, we want to skip this auto-scrolling section for sure, but the problem is when the screen inevitably stops scrolling, there's a wall that goes up into an endless sky that we will just eventually get crushed. Between this, there's still one way through this dreadful path, though. First, you use wire weapon on this first initial ceiling, and then let the screen push you, just like last time. This time, though, we will have to plan our landing. We will have to somehow get to this last falling platform, as Rush Coil cannot spawn on these. And that's right. This is a near frame-perfect jump trick that you can't even see. When you start to see this arrangement of platforms, press the start button twice. Then you'll want to roll to your finger on the D-pad, while spamming every button in the controller other than the jump button. If the button mashing gods allow you to proceed, you'll land on the final falling platform, and have just enough time to squeeze past the wall of doom. After that, we can escape to defeat the boss, who's fairly easy. For the first phase, use Pharaoh Shot, and for the second phase, charge up Buster Shots, and shooting him whenever you can. After that, we move on to Dr. Cossack's Stage 4, which is frankly a bit of a break. In Stage 4, there's actually an E-Tank near the beginning of the level. This means we are finally able to farm E-Tanks again. Game over tons of times until... and every life right before a game over, collect this E-Tank. When you come back from a game over, the number of E-Tanks you had doesn't reset, allowing you to finally get back to 9 E-Tanks. Finally! After that, Dr. Cossack's Stage 4 is kind of a maze, and I wish I had more to say about it, but it's really all we've been seeing, but harder. Here you'll want to take the secret path, as long as and it's a lot shorter, so it costs less weapon energy, and then you'll reach the boss, which isn't very hard. Just use Rush Coil and Dust Shot when you're in the air. You can use the wire weapon if you run out even, but I don't recommend it since we are trying to conserve weapon energy. After that, we can finally answer the question: can you beat? Wait, what now? You mean that whole time Dr. Cossack has been taken hostage by Dr. Wily and forced to do his biddings, even after we killed Dr. Wily in the last game? That's right. 4 more fortress stages await us as we step into Dr. Wily's fortress. Take one more last deep breath as you realize that you are so fucking dumb for doing this. Yeah, that's right. Why would anybody put themselves through this challenge? I'm looking pretty dumb right now. Dr. Wily's Fortress Stage 1 is themed around Mets. After gaming over to gain full weapon energy, these Mets can be annoying as hell. You'll get hit a lot, but that doesn't mean it's impossible. After a lot of farming and praying to the almighty Big Daddy gods, you'll reach this underwater section, which is our first and only use of Rush Marine. It doesn't need to be mounted. Just make contact with the sprite and you'll be good. You'll have to dismount sooner than we may want, but we are still able to get a good distance with him. So I say it's worth it. After that, you reach the almighty Big Daddy God himself. And wait, Big Daddy is his actual name? Are you kidding me? Seriously? No Capcom employee was just like, hey, this kind of sounds wrong. I'll tell you what. I bet y'all $5 that someone got fired after they saw that this was the name they chose. Anyways, he's pretty easy. Big Daddy be pretty easy. Stage 2 is a bit harder. After gaming over one more time, take the top slide tunnel in the beginning of the stage. Keep making rush coil hops from platform to platform, and then take the top route when falling down this screen. These caterpillars can be killed with one fully charged Mega Buster shot. After that, we reach one of the hardest hops in the challenge. Use our tried and true Rush Coil and Super Balloon combo to just barely snag the bottom edge of the ladder. In this next room, the right path is where you want to go. Rush Coil up to the first platform, spawn in Rush Coil to the left, edge of the platform, hug the nearest wall, and slide left. If you did it right, you'll make contact with Rush Coil right as the slide animation finishes, activating the Rush Coil boost with perfect timing. After dealing with these annoying mummies and killer gumball machines, we make it to the boss, which once we make it to the conveyor belt platforms and use Ring Boomerang, which is its weakness, it's pretty pathetically easy. Then comes Dr. Wily's Stage 3. The stage is home to the well-known Robot Master rematches. Only problem is that when we game over to effectively gain back all our weapon energy and E-tanks, we still have limited weapon energy. And that does not mean we're giving up, though. This means that this level's just going to be a very huge, fun, energy balancing puzzle. Use Wire Weapon instead of Rush Coil whenever you can when we, as we are going to need him for the final boss. Or not the final boss, but the boss of this stage. In terms of which order to refight the Robot Masters, Drill Man will be first, since we have the health to beat him. Use dive missiles as those are his weakness. After that, beating Bright Man with our usual strategy, we can beat Scroll Man, who uses the same strategy as well. Next, we beat Toe Man, which we use the Mega Buster on. And next we defeat Dive Man, whose strategy is a bit different. Again, we need to conserve energy on Rush Coil, so we now use Dive Man's weakness, which is the Skull Barrier, and then after that, we absolutely obliterate Dust Man with the Mega Buster. Then, we use Flash Stopper to stop time and drill millions of bullets into Pharaoh Man's face. Finally, Ring Man is the hardest rematch of them all. as here we have to resort to using our Mega Buster since we need Pharaoh Shot for the boss of this stage. Use T-Tanks whenever you need to, but he will eventually go down. Then we make the final climb to the final boss and hardest boss of this entire run. For his first phase, use Pharaoh Shot. You can have one fully charged Pharaoh Shot above your head, and by damaging the boss without throwing it, you still have another fully charged Pharaoh Shot in reserve that you can use without spending weapon energy. For the second phase, switch to Rush Coil and immediately spawn him in. Use Rush Coil to get into the air, and while in the air, switch to Drill Bomb and spam shoot, and so you can shoot that little red dot on the Skull Crusher thing. Then repeat until Dr. Wily's machine number 1 is down. This is a hard boss, but man, is it awesome to finally beat him. After that, the game is basically over. Stage 4 is nothing but a victory lap with a pathetic final boss, letting us take down Dr. Wily super easily. Now that the game is over, though, we come back to one question. Can you beat Mega Man 4 without jumping? No, that is the answer. But does that matter? I don't look at this challenge as a failure. I instead looking at it as a realization that we got super close to beating a Mega Man game without jumping. Just 2 jumps away, one in Pharaoh Man stage and one in Cossack Fortress stage 2. Given this information, I'm not giving up. In fact, to state it in a better way, we aren't giving up. That's right, I'm calling in more forces. Today marks the launch of the official Late Night with Hoopsie Show Discord, which has channels for every past and future episode of MythGamers. Here is the place where you and I can talk about each challenge and how we can finish each one and render it possible. The Discord link is in the description. With all that said, please like this video, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you can be notified whenever I upload. Finally, remember, y'all, don't sleep with turtles.